started. The technique that I'm going to show you all today, I hope, is something that is to do with things you might already have lying around at home or that you can easily acquire. Paper has been made for thousands of years. No one really knows when it was first being made. It depends on how you define paper. A lot of sources trace back the earliest example of contemporary paper making with pulp to China in 105 AD. But yeah, it can be made in a number of ways. There's, typically the two most traditional forms were by using vegetable fibres and layering them and pressing them, such as papyrus paper used by ancient Egyptians. That's also where the word paper comes from. And then there's also deconstructing and reconstructing as pulp fibre, which is more or less what I'm going to show you today. And paper has a history of being recycled. In those early examples in China, they were using old rags, old fishing nets, hemp waste, and stuff like that. I would encourage everyone to kind of look at what you've got lying around and try it out, because there's actually not much that can't be pulped down into paper. Here I've got some subject dividers. Oh, here we go. Egg carton is a really good thing to use because they come in lots of colours. Egg cartons are often already recycled. I've got some of my brother's math papers. But these actually work really cool because even with the little bits of ink coming through into the new paper, I like to see that. Envelopes are absolutely magical because on the inside they've got just like all this lovely pattern. And this is called a mould and a decal. So basically it's two corresponding frames. One of them has a mesh on it. I made these ones. A really easy way to make your own would be, you know, kind of the cheap canvases that you buy. They're stretched around a wooden frame, so you can take that off and use the frames. And I've played around with a lot of different meshes. This is my favourite. It's actually the stuff that goes over fruit trees so that birds don't get to it. And then, yeah, just stapled all around. But I've also used fly screen. This one down here, which I was got given as like a fine wire mesh. So I like to rip up my paper because it's relaxing and then it also allows me to kind of adjust I know for me that in my particular vat I need about an ice cream container of pulped material, and it needs to be about halfway full for me to get a nice sheet. But when you start pulling them, you'll notice it's kind of thicker or thinner, and it really depends on what you're using. This is pretty good. I can tell that it's blended because you actually start seeing little bits of fluffy pulp kind of coming up. But you can keep going and make it really smooth, or you can just sort of do a few blends for a bit of chunkiness. So I don't know, I've got a colour here. And it's always going to dry a bit lighter than what it is wet. So this is pulling a basic sheet, and I'm just going to go through this quickly before moving on to some more decorative, exciting stuff. What I did just then was, this isn't essential, but I just like kissed the top of the screen down onto the water, and then it just kind of takes a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is hold the mould just nice and firmly onto the decal, and I enter the vat sort of at a 45-degree angle and then pull it straight up. And I usually just give, just mix it a little bit just so I know, because the pulp is heavier so it will sink to the bottom. Just going to wait for some of the drips to come out. And at this point, this vat's really good because I can just rest it on here. And then I'm going to carefully take the mould and lift it up. And there it is. It kind of never gets old. That's why I kept making paper. But yeah, so it's almost, if you're a printmaker, I see it as very similar to printmaking because you add the ingredients and then you just leave the materials to do what they're going to do. Like, it's very honest to your material process. Because I now have a few of these A4 screens that I made, I quite like to just dry it on the screen because it allows me to transport it easily. So last night I went and collected some grass because, I don't know, grass is pretty invasive. Yeah, there's some grass in here that I've just been soaking in hot water and soda ash. Soda ash is actually not essential. It's basically washing powder. This is basically soap, and what it does to anything natural is just make sure that the natural dyes from the thing don't soak into the paper. It kind of keeps their colour locked in and it's not going to spread out. So yeah, I've just got some chopped up bits of grass in there. But what I could put them in just like that or give them a quick blend, which I might do. And just a little bit of something like that goes a long way. So yeah, even from the back you can see that the grass is kind of gone quite well. And a question I get quite a lot is how do I get my paper to have those speckles in them? So it happens naturally, as you can see, but what you could also do is just to your pulp add like a bit of a contrasting colour and not blend it as much. So now my paper's going to have like some yellow spots. And that's the kind of look there. So yeah, and you can pretty much play around endlessly with those 3 techniques alone. What I also do is collect a lot of other things, like I do some pressing. There's a sort of a section of pressed flowers and leaves and stuff. So if you want to embed anything or sort of decorate the paper, these are some old bits of fabric. It definitely works better if the objects are quite flat because once the paper is dry, it loses its volume quite a lot. I often create images this way just by lying things on top. So it's kind of just sticking on there, that's just some fabric. And it's a beautiful colour leaf with lots of bites out of it. So that will hold quite well by itself, but the other thing that you can do, and it's a little bit scary, is to just run it through again. So with those on top. This is a little bit hard because you have to be quite confident in your pull. If you're not, if you kind of hesitate, then sometimes it sludges off. If I just grab some examples. The next thing I'm going to show you is, I guess it could be called pulp painting. Is one of my old ones. It's kind of a combination of things pressed into the paper as well as painting. In my studio I have lots of buckets of different colours, so every time I collect something there's like always paper in my bag. There's like always a lot of rubbish, and then I just sort of keep it there until I have time to deposit into all the different colour boxes. These were this is sort of what I'm going to make, but these were made in the bottom of an ice cream container. So there's things like screws and quite thick objects that have been embedded in the pulp, and I just put a lot of pulp on top. And really average things like what we'd consider as weeds press really well. So you don't need anything flash to be pressed. For the pulp painting part, it's less concentrated. Or is it more? It's more concentrated with the pulp. It hasn't got as much water in it, so it's kind of like a sludge consistency. As you can see, it's kind of thick enough for me to do this, and it is actually really nice to come and do it with your hands. Pouring is also quite a nice technique because it's a little bit less controlled. So I'm just going to pour that section there. This is definitely not winning any awards. Within those things that I've showed you, you can kind of mix them up as much as you want, and but I think those are like the sort of techniques that I use to